Good morning, everybody. This video is a replacement of video that was released yesterday with a serious error. This video will deal with decibels. And so let's start. So decibels is a way that we can describe change or improvement, or we can we can describe how things got worse. So a decibel is basically reporting the change in some quantity or variable. So let's get started. Let's assume that we have a transmitter here. It's connected to an antenna, and today we will draw a dipole antenna. It has two elements in it. And let's assume that it's putting out 3 watts. And you're talking to a guy, and he's saying, you know, I can't hear you very well. Why don't you increase your power? So what you do is you turn the transmitter power up, and this time it puts out 6 watts. And he says, you know, he says, I can hear you better. So you want to describe this improvement. So what you did is notice that you doubled the power. You went from 3 watts to 6 watts. Well, if you were to describe this in decibels, you would have a 3 dB improvement. So every time you double the power, you improve the signal by a quantity of 3 decibels. But you know, the guy on the other end says, you know, he says, I can hear you, but I'm having still a little trouble, so crank up the power some more. So you, again, double it again. So now you're outputting 12 watts. So since you double the power, you again have improved your signal by 3 dB. And so the change from 3 watts to 12 watts is simply the addition of the changes. So let's review what we did. Is that it started at 3 watts, we went to 12. Remember how we got there. We doubled it, and then we doubled it again. Every time we double, we add 3 dB. And this is the trick, is that you can quickly describe changes by figuring out how many times you doubled the power. So I'm going to talk about one more trick. Is that let's again have a transmitter, and this time we're going to start at 2 watts. And the guy you're talking to on the other end says, I can just barely hear you. Increase your power. So this time you're pretty impatient. And instead of going in increments of small increments, you go from 2 watts to 200 watts. So the guy on the end says, man, I can really hear you well now. How many dB did you increase your power? Alright, here's the second trick, is that notice that this is a huge step. So we're going to take this step, and there's a very special case, is when you increase by a factor of 10, i.e. when you go from 2 watts to 20 watts, you've had an improvement of 10 dB. Now notice you haven't gotten to the 200 watts, but again, by a factor of 10, if you go from 20 watts to 200 watts, you've increased it again by a factor of 10 dB. So your total improvement is 20 dB. So let's kind of review the tricks. If you double the quantity, you have made an increase or a change of 3 dB. So that's trick number 1. If you increase it by a factor of 10, you make a 10 dB change. So the two rules are, if you double, you increase it by 3. If you go by a factor of 10, you increase it by 10, and you just keep doing that till you get to from the quantity you started with, 2 watts, to 200 watts. And this is a pretty neat trick, and you can get there without really having to do logarithmic mathematics. That's it for today, guys. See you next video.